At 1 o'clock in the morning, Oliver Hawthorne, the ruthless billionaire who trusted no one, crept through freezing streets. Following his night shift maid for 3 weeks, he'd watched Kendra Rivers leave his hotel with suspiciously heavy bags, coinciding perfectly with missing inventory reports. His board demanded her termination. But Oliver verified everything personally. When he reached the crumbling apartment building and pushed open the door, he froze. Kendra knelt among 7 sleeping children, warming stolen hotel leftovers, wrapping them in discarded linens. Her entire existence poured into keeping siblings together. The thief was a guardian. The criminal was a saint. Everything Oliver believed about people, about employees, about trust, shattered in that doorway. But would discovering her secret at 1 a.m. be enough to melt a heart forged in steel and suspicion? Welcome to Life in Stories, where every tale reveals the extraordinary hidden within ordinary moments. If this is your first time here, subscribe and join our community of story lovers. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love connecting with viewers around the world. Now, let's begin. The penthouse of the Hawthorne Crown Hotel existed in a realm where silence cost more than noise. Glass chandeliers refracted light across white marble floors, polished to mirror perfection. Every surface gleamed with the quiet hum of wealth, calculated, controlled, untouchable. Oliver Hawthorne sat behind his mahogany desk, reviewing acquisition documents for a downtown property portfolio, his 37-year-old face illuminated by the blue glow of 3 computer screens. Outside, the city slept. Inside, Oliver worked. This was his existence. Mergers that stretched into midnight, lawsuits dissected over breakfast, contracts negotiated during what others called leisure time. His calendar held no personal appointments, only transactions. His phone contained business contacts, not friends. Relationships were liabilities his father had warned against with his dying breath. Never trust the help, Oliver. They see everything, and they want everything. Malcolm Hawthorne had built an empire on suspicion, died alone in this very penthouse, and left his son a fortune wrapped in paranoia. Oliver had learned the lesson well. Every handshake concealed an agenda, every smile masked calculation. Wealth made him prey, and vulnerability made him weak. He trusted numbers, spreadsheets, contracts with penalty clauses. He trusted no one. The elevator chimed softly at 11:30. Oliver didn't look up. The night shift cleaning crew had arrived. As predictable as the stock market opening, bell footsteps moved through the hallway, quiet, efficient, respectful of the late hour. One set of footsteps belonged to Kendra Rivers, 28 years old, black, reserved to the point of invisibility. She'd worked at the Hawthorne Crown for 18 months, always the night shift, always punctual, always alone. While other staff chatted during breaks, Kendra worked. While others cut corners on less visible tasks, she maintained standards that exceeded protocol. Her employee file contained 0 complaints, 0 tardiness, 0 requests for special accommodation. She was, by every measurable metric, exceptional. Oliver had noticed her the way he noticed everything, through pattern recognition. She cleaned the penthouse every night after 11:30, moved through rooms with practiced grace that never disturbed his concentration, and departed the building at 12:55 without fail. Her efficiency impressed him in the abstract way a well-designed machine impressed him, but lately a different pattern had emerged. The bag. Every night, Kendra left carrying a large canvas bag, worn at the handles, bulging with contents that seemed too heavy for cleaning supplies. At first, Oliver dismissed it. Staff took trash out. They transported equipment. But the bag's weight varied. Sometimes she struggled visibly, sometimes it hung lighter on her shoulder. Then came the inventory reports. Linens are disappearing from the 14th and 16th floors. James Potter, the hospitality director, had announced during Tuesday's operations meeting high thread count sheets, premium towels. Nothing catastrophic individually, but the pattern suggests internal theft. Oliver's legal team had leaned forward. The board members exchanged glances. Theft meant lawsuits, insurance claims, employee terminations that could trigger wrongful dismissal counterclaims. We've also noticed discrepancies in kitchen inventory, Potter continued, sliding a spreadsheet across the conference table. Prepared foods logged as waste, but waste bins show lower volumes than recorded someone's taking food intended for disposal. Who has access? Oliver had asked, his voice flat, analytical. Potter hesitated. After hours? Primarily the night cleaning staff, and among them, only one person accesses every floor, every suite, every service area. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Kendra Rivers, Potter said quietly. She fits the timeline perfectly. She's the only employee with universal building access after 10 p.m. I recommend immediate termination pending investigation. Oliver's CFO nodded. His head of security agreed. The legal team suggested documentation procedures to minimize liability. But Oliver said nothing. He didn't fire people based on patterns. He verified. He investigated. He controlled outcomes through information, not assumption. His father had taught him suspicion, but Oliver had refined it into methodology. Accusations without evidence were emotional reactions, and emotion was the enemy of good business. Still, the possibility gnawed at him. Kendra Rivers, the quiet woman who never asked for anything, who worked harder than anyone else, who kept her eyes down and her conversations minimal. Could she be stealing from him? From his hotel? The thought felt simultaneously plausible and wrong, like an equation that balanced mathematically but violated intuition. Trust was irrelevant. Verification mattered. That night, Oliver made a decision. Instead of leaving at his usual 10 p.m., he would stay. Lights off in the penthouse suite, surveillance without cameras. Old-fashioned observation that couldn't be subpoenaed or hacked. He positioned himself near the western windows where shadows pooled deepest, his silhouette invisible against the city skyline. Minutes stretched into hours. His coffee grew cold. His phone buzzed with emails he ignored. At 12:56, movement. Kendra emerged from the service hallway, her canvas bag slung over one shoulder, visibly heavy tonight. Her posture seemed tense, hurried in a way that contradicted her usual measured pace. She glanced around the lobby, a quick, furtive sweep, before stepping into the service elevator. Oliver's pulse quickened despite himself. At 12:58, he watched through the penthouse windows as Kendra exited through the hotel's back entrance, the canvas bag pulling her shoulder down, her breath visible in the winter air. She turned left, heading toward the older neighborhoods beyond the commercial district, walking with purpose into the sleeping city. Oliver grabbed his coat. He didn't call security, didn't alert his legal team, didn't follow protocol. He followed her alone. Oliver Hawthorne had never walked these streets before. The commercial district gave way to residential blocks where streetlights flickered instead of glowed, where storefronts displayed security grates instead of window displays, where the pavement cracked like dried earth. Kendra moved ahead of him, 50 yards distant, her canvas bag swinging with each purposeful step. Oliver kept to the shadows, his expensive coat buttoned against cold that penetrated deeper here than in his climate-controlled penthouse. His mind cycled through possibilities with algorithmic precision. Black market resale. She could be fencing stolen hotel goods through online marketplaces. Premium linens fetched good money. Luxury toiletries moved quickly in certain networks. His security director had mentioned employee theft rings before, coordinated operations where multiple staff members participated. Or perhaps blackmail. Maybe Kendra had discovered something about a wealthy guest, some indiscretion captured on her late-night rounds, and she was delivering evidence to a partner who specialized in extortion. The heavy bag could contain documents, recordings, photographs. Criminal conspiracy seemed most likely. Someone this careful, this disciplined in her deception, had practice. The precision of her timing, the consistency of her routine. These indicated planning, organization, probably accomplices. Oliver's father would have called security immediately, would have had her arrested on suspicion alone, protected the Hawthorne name first, asked questions never. But Oliver wasn't his father. He needed to see to know, to verify before destroying. Kendra turned onto a street where apartment buildings hunched together like prisoners, their brick facades stained by decades of neglect, paint peeled in long strips from window frames. Fire escapes sagged under rust's weight. A street lamp buzzed and died as Oliver passed beneath it, plunging the block into deeper shadow. The temperature dropped. Not meteorologically, the night remained consistently cold, but atmospherically. Wealth insulated against more than weather. It insulated against proximity to struggle, to the visual evidence of systems failing, of people surviving in the gaps between what society promised and what it delivered. Oliver had donated to charities, had written checks at fundraising galas, had approved corporate giving initiatives that enhanced the Hawthorne brand. But he'd never stood on a street where poverty wasn't abstract, where cold air leaked through cracked windows into homes where families slept. Kendra entered the third building on the left, disappearing through a door that didn't quite close, its lock mechanism broken or bypassed. Oliver waited 30 seconds, long enough to avoid immediate detection, short enough to maintain visual contact. Then he followed. Inside, the hallway smelled of mildew and cooking oil, layers of scent marking years of tenants passing through. The stairwell groaned under his weight, each step announcing his presence despite his attempts at stealth. His heartbeat accelerated. What would he find? What would he say when she saw him? What legal exposure was he creating by confronting her without witnesses, without his legal team documenting the interaction? Second floor, third floor, voices, children's voices. Oliver froze mid-step, his hand gripping the stair railing. Children? The possibility hadn't appeared in his mental calculations. His scenarios involved criminals, accomplices, underground networks, not children. A door stood slightly ajar at the hallway's end, warm light spilling across worn carpet. The voices came from inside, young and unself-conscious in the way only children's voices could be. Oliver approached slowly, each footfall deliberate, controlled. His breathing seemed loud in his own ears. He reached the doorframe, looked inside. The apartment was cramped, living room, kitchen, and dining area compressed into a space smaller than his penthouse bathroom. 7 children occupied the room in various states of wakefulness. 2 older ones, perhaps 13 and 15, sat at a battered kitchen table with homework spread before them. A middle child, maybe 8, colored carefully in a donated workbook. 3 younger ones arranged themselves on a threadbare couch, covered by clean blankets that Oliver recognized immediately. Hawthorne Crown Hotel, premium guest linens, the ones missing from inventory reports. And Kendra stood at the stove, warming food in mismatched pots, her canvas bag emptied beside her. Hotel leftovers, the prepared meals logged as waste, steamed gently as she stirred. On the counter, luxury toiletries were portioned into smaller containers. Shampoo, soap, lotion, the expensive amenities from VIP suites. "Did you bring my inhaler?" one child asked, coughing softly. Kendra turned immediately, concern sharpening her features. "I got it, baby. Right here." She retrieved a prescription inhaler from her bag, helped the child use it properly, placed a gentle hand on the small back. "You're okay. Deep breaths. You'll feel better in the morning. On the refrigerator, a list written in careful handwriting. Monday, school fees due for Andrew and Tiana. Tuesday, homework help, math for Jordan. Wednesday, doctor appointment, Caleb's asthma check. Thursday, laundry rotation. Friday, reading practice with youngest 3 emergency contacts. Kendra Rivers, primary. Below that, a medication schedule, a chore chart, a weekly meal plan constructed around donated food and careful budgeting. This wasn't a criminal operation. This was a life raft built from stolen hotel waste and one woman's fierce determination. Oliver felt something unfamiliar move through his chest. Not anger, not vindication, but a sensation he couldn't immediately name. The world tilted slightly, his assumptions crumbling like the apartment building's cracked foundation. One of the older children noticed him first. "Miss Kendra." She turned, saw him standing in the doorway. The color drained from her face. Fear. Pure, unfiltered fear. Her hands trembled. The spoon she'd been holding clattered against the pot. 7 pairs of eyes turned toward Oliver Hawthorne, the billionaire who held their entire fragile world in his hands. "Sir," Kendra's voice broke on the single syllable. She stepped forward, positioning herself between Oliver and the children, protective even in terror. "Please, please don't fire me." Oliver couldn't speak. The words existed somewhere in his mind. Questions, accusations, business protocols. But they dissolved before reaching his mouth. Kendra stood before him, trembling, waiting for judgment from a man who'd built an empire on detachment. "I didn't steal for myself," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. The children remained frozen behind her, instinctively understanding that their safety hung in the balance. "I know what it looks like. I know I broke rules. But the hotel throws away so much. Food that's perfectly good, linens with minor stains that guests reject, toiletries barely used. I only took what would have gone to the dumpster anyway." Oliver's gaze moved past her to the children. The oldest girl clutched a textbook protectively. A boy with the inhaler watched with wide, calculating eyes, already preparing for abandonment. The youngest 3 huddled together on the couch, wrapped in stolen blankets that probably cost more than this month's rent. "Their mother was Shanice," Kendra continued, words spilling faster now, desperate. "She lived next door, worked 2 jobs, did everything right. But cancer doesn't care about doing things right. She fought for 18 months, worked until she physically couldn't, used every penny for treatment and rent and keeping her babies fed." Kendra's hands twisted together, knuckles pale against brown skin. "I watched her get sicker, watched her lose weight, lose hair, lose hope. But she never lost her fight for them, never." The apartment's warmth suddenly felt suffocating. Oliver loosened his tie without thinking, a gesture his board members would have found shocking. Oliver Hawthorne never displayed discomfort, never showed weakness. 3 weeks before she died, Shanice asked me to promise something. Kendra's voice cracked. "She made me swear I'd keep them together." Social services was already circling, asking questions, making assessments. She knew what would happen. 7 kids split between foster homes, siblings separated by counties, family destroyed because the system can't accommodate large groups. Oliver had signed charitable donations for foster care initiatives, had attended fundraisers where statistics were presented over wine and hors d'oeuvres. But statistics didn't cough in the night, didn't do homework at battered tables, didn't look at strangers with eyes that had already seen too much loss. "I promised her," Kendra whispered. "I held her hand in the hospital and promised I'd fight to keep them together. She died 2 days later, and I've been fighting ever since." "Why didn't you contact social services yourself?" Oliver asked, his first words since entering the apartment. They sounded harsh in his own ears, clinical and detached, the voice he used in depositions. Kendra's laugh was bitter. "I did, sir. I applied to be their guardian. Do you know what they told me? That I'm a single woman working minimum wage with no biological relation to the children, that I live in a studio apartment unsuitable for housing 7 minors, that my financial situation makes me an unstable candidate for long-term guardianship. She gestured around the cramped apartment. This place belonged to Shanice, the landlord's letting me stay month to month unofficially, cash payments, no lease. Because the moment social services knows these kids are here without proper guardianship, they'll remove them. I work the night shift because it pays slightly more and because it gives me access to resources. She faltered. Resources I need to keep them alive. Oliver's mind automatically calculated costs. 7 children, food, clothing, school supplies, medical expenses, rent on an apartment that shouldn't legally house this many people. Kendra's hotel salary, even with night differential, couldn't possibly cover it. I work another job during the day, Kendra said, reading his expression. Cleaning houses, 4 hours between school drop-off and picking up the youngest from the neighbor who watches them. The older 2 help with the younger ones. We make it work. Barely, but we make it work. For the first time in years, Oliver Hawthorne felt the weight of his privilege like a physical pressure on his chest. He spent more on single business dinners than Kendra earned in months. His penthouse suite, empty except for him and his paranoia, could house 3 families comfortably. The food his hotel disposed of daily could feed this apartment for weeks. His father's voice echoed, "Never trust the help. They see everything and they want everything." But Kendra didn't want everything. She wanted enough. Enough to honor a promise, enough to keep children together, enough to survive. "If you fire me," Kendra said quietly. "I understand I broke policy. I took hotel property without permission, but please." Her voice broke completely now, tears streaming down her face. "Please give me 2 weeks. Let me find another job first. Let me figure out how to keep them fed until I can replace the income. These babies have already lost their mother. Don't make them lose everything else too." The oldest girl started crying silently. The boy with the inhaler put an arm around her shoulders. The younger children watched with faces too solemn for their ages, already accustomed to adult crises they shouldn't have to understand. Oliver thought about his board meeting tomorrow, about James Potter's recommendation for immediate termination, about his legal team's concerns regarding liability and precedent, about his father's warnings against emotional decision-making. He thought about 7 children being separated into different homes, different schools, different lives, becoming statistics in reports presented at fundraising galas. He thought about Kendra, working 2 jobs, sleeping perhaps 4 hours a night, stealing hotel trash to keep a promise to a dying woman. He thought about who he was, who his father had taught him to be, and who he might choose to become. Without a word, Oliver Hawthorne turned and walked out of the apartment, his footsteps echoing in the hallway, leaving Kendra collapsed against the doorframe, 7 children holding their breath, and the future suspended in terrible, unknowable silence. The boardroom of the Hawthorne Crown Hotel gleamed with morning light, reflecting off polished surfaces and the anxious faces of executives who'd arrived expecting routine business. James Potter sat with dismissal paperwork, organized in a leather folder, his presentation prepared, his case against Kendra Rivers airtight by every corporate standard. Oliver entered last, as always, his expression unreadable. He took his seat at the table's head, nodded for the meeting to begin. "First item," Potter announced, sliding the folder toward Oliver, "the inventory discrepancies we discussed. I've documented the pattern, confirmed the timeline, and prepared termination papers for the employee in question. All we need is your signature to proceed with dismissal and potential criminal charges." The legal team leaned forward. The CFO adjusted his glasses. The head of security opened his tablet to incident reports. Oliver didn't touch the folder. "Kendra Rivers will not be fired," he said quietly. Silence crashed through the room like a physical force. "Sir?" Potter's confusion was absolute. "The evidence clearly shows—" "I'm aware of what the evidence shows." Oliver's voice remained calm, but something in it made the entire board still. "It shows that we waste more resources in a single week than most families see in a year. It shows that one employee recognized this waste and found a way to help people with it. That is not a crime. That is leadership we should be learning from." The CFO spoke carefully. "Oliver, precedent matters. If we allow employees to take hotel property, even discarded property, we create legal exposure. Then we change the policy." Oliver opened his own folder, distributing printed copies around the table. "Effective immediately, the Hawthorne Crown will implement a formal donation program. Food waste goes to verified community organizations. Gently used linens and amenities are collected for homeless shelters and family support services. We document everything. Make it official. Make it legal." Shocked faces stared back at him. "Furthermore," Oliver continued, his voice gaining strength, "I'm announcing a new initiative, the Hawthorne Sibling Housing Project. Will fund transitional housing specifically for sibling groups at risk of separation in the foster care system, will provide stable homes, educational support, and case management to keep families together during crisis periods. The cost," the CFO began, "is negligible compared to what we spend on marketing and executive bonuses." Oliver's gaze swept the room. "And it's an investment in something more valuable than our stock price. It's an investment in doing what's right." James Potter sat frozen, his dismissal papers suddenly irrelevant. "Kendra Rivers will transition to a new position," Oliver said. "Community Outreach Coordinator. She'll manage the donation program and help design the housing initiative. Her salary will reflect the value she brings to this organization, value I failed to recognize until now." He stood, signaling the meeting's end. "Any questions?" No one spoke. The board members exchanged glances that ranged from bewildered to impressed to concerned about their CEO's sudden transformation. Oliver walked out, leaving them to process a decision that made no business sense and perfect human sense. That evening, Oliver returned to the apartment building, climbing the 3 flights of stairs with a different purpose than the night before. He knocked this time, waited to be invited rather than observing from doorways. Kendra opened the door, her eyes red from sleepless anxiety. When she saw him, fear flickered across her face again, the fear of someone waiting for a verdict that would determine 7 lives. "May I come in?" Oliver asked. She stepped back wordlessly. The children were eating dinner, actual groceries this time, purchased with money Kendra probably couldn't afford to spend, but had spent anyway, perhaps thinking it would be their last meal together, before everything fell apart. "You're not being fired," Oliver said simply. "You're being promoted." Kendra's legs seemed to give out. She caught herself against the kitchen counter, hand over her mouth, tears spilling instantly. "I don't understand," she whispered. Oliver explained the donation program, the housing initiative, her new position. With each detail, Kendra's expression transformed from disbelief to wonder to something that looked dangerously like hope. "Why?" she finally asked. "I broke your rules. I took from your hotel." "You kept them together," Oliver said, looking at the children who'd stopped eating to listen. "When every system failed them, when bureaucracy would have torn them apart, you found a way. That takes more strength than I've ever had to demonstrate." Kendra shook her head, still crying. "You're giving us a chance. You're making it possible. You saved them." "No," Oliver said firmly. "You did. I'm just finally using my resources for something that matters." He knelt to eye level with the youngest child, a 3-year-old girl watching him with solemn curiosity. "What's your name?" "Maya," she whispered. "Maya, do you like your brothers and sisters?" She nodded vigorously. "Then we're going to make sure you all stay together. I promise." The weight of that promise, so similar to the one Kendra had made to Shanice, settled over Oliver with unexpected rightness. His father had taught him that promises were contracts to be broken when convenient. But looking at 7 children who'd already lost too much, Oliver understood that some promises mattered more than profit margins. Spring arrived early that year. The Hawthorne Sibling housing project opened its first facility in March, a renovated building with space for multiple families, social workers on staff, and educational resources funded by a foundation Oliver established in Shanice's name. Kendra's 7 children were the first residents, finally official, finally legal, finally safe. Kendra thrived in her new role, designing programs with the practical wisdom of someone who'd survived what others only studied. Oliver found himself spending less time in his penthouse, more time visiting the housing project, learning names, attending school events, discovering that wealth meant nothing if it built walls instead of bridges. One afternoon, he found Kendra in the community garden behind the housing facility, teaching the younger children to plant vegetables. Maya ran to him immediately, showing off dirt-covered hands with pride. "Look what I grew, Mr. Oliver." "That's beautiful, Maya," he smiled, an expression that appeared more frequently now. Less calculated, more genuine. Kendra stood, brushing soil from her jeans. "You know, 6 months ago I was stealing your trash to keep them alive. Now I'm teaching them to grow their own food in a garden you built. Life is strange." "Life is what we choose to make it," Oliver replied. "I spent 37 years choosing isolation and suspicion. I'm choosing something different now." She looked at him with an expression he'd learned to recognize. Respect earned through action rather than demanded through power. "Thank you," she said simply, "for seeing us, for caring, for becoming someone your father probably wouldn't recognize." Oliver watched 7 children laughing in the garden, their faces turned toward sunlight and futures that hadn't existed 6 months ago. He thought about the man he'd been, cold, methodical, alone in a penthouse of glass and marble. And he thought about who he was becoming, someone who understood that true wealth wasn't measured in profit margins, but in promises kept and lives transformed. "I wouldn't recognize him either," Oliver said. "And I'm grateful for that." Kendra smiled. Maya called them both to see the first green shoots emerging from the soil, tiny, fragile, but growing toward the light with determined resilience just like all of them.
Thank you for watching Life in Stories. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs hope today. Your comments mean everything. Tell me what you thought below. Until next time, remember, the most powerful transformations often begin at the most unexpected moments.